Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you all here on the President's Lunch and Learn. She'e ethel branchian chef mi putwini nishle nakai bushes chin sitnijini dashache ado nakai dashanella. East Canyon Diablo de Nasha. Loop chapter, Asia chapter. And again, it's great to be here with all of you today. We have some very exciting news. We will be there will be legislation introduced shortly to approve on behalf of the nation our Rio San Jose stream system water rights settlement in New Mexico. And so we're very happy. Michelle has put many long hours into that. We have some wildly important goals here at the Department of Justice. And one of Michelle's goals is to close out the settlements for the nation's remaining water claims, our unsettled water claims. And so she's been very hard at work at that and has New Mexico ready to go. And of course, she'll also make an announcement about another settlement we have very close to being ready to go. But for now, just a reminder, Shea Deneva, Washington, Aitso Shinanish, and it's an honor to be the nation's 13th Attorney General, and especially to be working on these incredible projects to ensure water security for our people for generations. So an honor to be able to do this work, and also to get to work with folks like Michelle and the president and everyone on the team that makes this possible. So Michelle, I'm going to hand things over to you.
Okay, thank you, AG, and thank you for all of your hard work on these settlements as well. It definitely takes a team to get us to where we are now. So first I'll introduce myself, Michelle Espino Yinshia, Tachi Ninshle, Anaslana Bashishchin, Sinajini Dashiche, Anaslana Dashanala. On my father's side, I am Oglala and Salish and Cutney. And I'm originally from the Torreon chapter. My family, my immediate family, my children and I reside in the Rio Rancho area, but we're originally from Torreon chapter. And as the Attorney General said, I'm really happy to announce that our New Mexico settlement, it's actually the Navajo Nation Rio San Jose water stream water rights settlement, stream system water rights settlement in New Mexico is going to be introduced into the Navajo Nation Council process very shortly, soon. And also, I'd like to inform you that the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement Agreement. This is the comprehensive water rights settlement in Arizona. Will also, in the near term, be introduced in the Navajo Nation Council process. We've I guess you could say we're finalizing all of the documents that have to be part of the process. We're wanting to make sure that we have all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed. And so we're working with the Office of Legislative Counsel, and also our sponsor for both legislations will be the Honorable Crystalline Curley, our speaker. And so she has been very involved in this work as well. So, but today, since the New Mexico settlement, the Rio San Jose Stream System settlement, will be introduced very shortly, we're going to go ahead and talk about that today. So if I could get my PowerPoint put up, and then I'll go ahead and walk through the what the settlement is. And we have had presentations on the settlement before, but we're going to go ahead. I can actually have more confirmation in what's in the settlement now that we're very close to having it introduced to the Navajo Nation Council. Okay, so this is the Rio San Jose Water Rights Settlement. It's actually the Rio San Jose Stream System. That's the official technical name for the Rio San Jose, what we would also call the basin. And if you could go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So in the work that we're doing to settle our water rights, I do want to say that it's been great to have the team that we have. And our team is basically all Navajo. Our 3 water rights attorneys in the Department of Justice are Navajo. Our Attorney General is Navajo. We also work very closely with the Department of Water Resources. They are our technical experts, and all of those that are working with us are Navajo, and they are our principal hydrologists. And then we do have some outside consultants that we're working with, and they've been very helpful bringing in their expertise. We also have Bitta Becker, who is the President's Chief Legal Counsel, and she is Navajo as well. So in our work and going out and listening to the communities, we know how important it is to remember where we come from, who we are, and also that we're doing this for our future generations, and to ensure that we have a permanent homeland for our Navajo people, and so that we can continue to practice our culture, our way of life. And so water is life, and this is the principle that we move forward with on working on these settlements. Okay, next slide. This is the map of the Navajo Nation water rights claims. This is the entire Navajo Nation. You see that our boundaries are up in the north, are created by our rivers, our major rivers, the Colorado River. And you'll see that in pink, that the map that cuts halfway, a little bit, almost halfway through the Navajo Nation, it's in pink. That is the Upper Basin Colorado River. And then down below in blue, that is the Lower Basin Colorado River. And then off to the right, you'll see green, which is, or yellowish green, which is the Rio Grande Basin, and that is in New Mexico. And so we are going to talk mainly about today the Rio Grande Basin, and that's where the Rio San Jose subbasin is located, as well as the Rio Puerco subbasin. Okay, next slide. So the Rio Grande, this is one of our one of our 4 sacred rivers, and it sets the boundaries for Dinétah. And the pronunciation in Navajo is Tu'ba'adeh. I probably said that wrong. And it's born from one of our sacred mountains, and again considered one of our 4 sacred rivers, and is a protector for the Navajo people. The Rio Grande Basin is 335,000 square miles, and it extends across the Navajo Nation, the United States, and Mexico. Next slide. So the Rio San Jose adjudication actually began in 1983, and the U.S. filed claims for the pueblos of Laguna and Acoma. And in 1987, the Navajo Nation filed its statement of claims in the case. And so the matter has been ongoing since the 1980s. And I would say in the last 5 to 8 years, the case has been stayed in order for negotiations to be discussed. And the Laguna and Acoma, their sub-proceeding is active. And when they begin negotiations, and it was apparent that the Navajo Nation, because where the Navajo Nation is located within the basin, that it would be important to include them in a settlement. And so we were invited to become part of the current negotiations probably about 5 years ago. And we began those discussions with the Pueblos and with the United States, with the Village of Milan, City of Grants, and the state of New Mexico, as well as other non-Indian water users in the basin. And so that's how we got to where we are today. Next slide. So again, these are the settlement parties. The Navajo Nation for our trust land, that's what's included in this settlement, is Navajo Nation trust land. And then the Pueblos of Acoma and Laguna, the United States, also acting as trustee, the state of New Mexico, the city of Grants, the village of Milan, and 9 individual acequias and community ditches. And you'll see on the right a map that depicts all of the parties. In the center of the basin, you'll see a pink area and a green area. Those are the pueblos. The Pueblo of Acoma is in pink and the Pueblo of Laguna in green. And then you'll see all the way to the far east, you'll see the Navajo Nation community of Tquahajale, and you'll see that just a little portion of it is in the Rio San Jose basin. And then to the left, and towards the kind of in the middle bottom, that is the Navajo community chapter of Rama, and so it is also located within a portion of the Rio San Jose basin. And then up north, you'll see a lot more community chapters of the Navajo Nation that are in the northern part of the basin. And then, of course, I-40 runs right through, and many of you know where Grants and Milan are. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the 9 community chapters that are located within the San Jose Basin are Baca Pruitt, Casimiro Lake, Crown Point, Little Water, Mariano Lake, Rama, Smith Lake, Theroux, and Tquahajale. And we are going to also talk about the Rio Puerco Basin, because we are also settling our water rights claims in the Rio Puerco Basin as a part of this settlement agreement. Although they're not, Rio Puerco Basin is not in the title of the settlement, it is still a part of the settlement. We call it an out-of-basin claim. We saw the opportunity to include the Rio Puerco Basin in the settlement, and if it's approved by Congress, by the Navajo Nation Council, and then by Congress, then we will be able to bring much needed water development infrastructure to the chapters that are located within the Rio Puerco Basin, including Tquahajale. And the other 6 chapters that you see there listed. So this map is a map of the Rio Grande Basin. It's the New Mexico map. You'll see how it's located in the top right of the map in comparison to the Colorado River basins and in the state of New Mexico as well. And so you'll see in the larger portion of the map where the Rio Puerco Basin kind of hugs the Rio San Jose Basin and goes from south to north around the Rio San Jose Basin. And so you'll be able to kind of see where the chapters are located. Now, down south is a basin, it's kind of in a greenish bluish color. It's the Rio Salado Basin. The Rio Salado Basin for the Navajo Nation is not a part of this settlement. We do have a community that's in the Rio Salado Basin, and that's the Alamo community. They are also partially included just a little bit, as you see, in the Rio San Jose stream system. And however, that is probably the Rio Salado Basin is most likely going to be a settlement for the future for the Navajo Nation. It's something that we have talked about and are considering how to proceed forward. So we'll go ahead and go on to the next slide. So in the areas that I described in the Rio San Jose stream system, there are many homes that are still without piped water access. And you'll see on the map on the left that it depicts homes without piped water. Now, in the more red areas, there's actually more than 200 homes that are without piped water. In the orange, it's 150 to 200, and in the yellow, it's 100 to 150. And then you'll see, going up north in the Navajo chapters, that we have areas where this number goes down. We have 0 to 100 homes that are without piped water. And I believe that a lot of that has to do, with the work of the local communities, the Navajo Nation, and also the state of New Mexico and the capital outlay process that's available there. Of course, more importantly, the settlement in the San Juan Basin, which brought the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project to the Navajo Nation to serve our communities. So you'll see that there's actually progress being made since that settlement was put forth, along with, in partnership with the nation, the United States, and the state of New Mexico to address the water access issues in New Mexico. Okay, next slide. The settlement itself does include our past and present water uses in the Rio San Jose stream system and the Rio Puerco Basin. I'm actually going to have Kevin, if it's possible, if you could go back to the last slide. I want to talk about the picture on the right. The picture on the right is what, from an aerial shot, is what the Navajo Nation looks like in the Rio San Jose Basin. Existing groundwater supplies are limited, and the groundwater that is available is of poor quality. As many Navajos know, there was a lot of mining in this area, and not just Navajos, but New Mexicans as well. A lot of uranium mining and other types of mining, and it has affected our groundwater. And also what affects our groundwater are the drought conditions that we've been dealing with for several decades, and we understand will continue for quite a few more, has impacted the availability of the water and also the quality of the water. So next slide. So the reason I wanted to go back to that is because when we were working on the settlement, one of the issues that we had is, how much water is there to claim? And so right now, the people will say, all those involved in this will say that water is very limited in the basin. However, we can't predict Mother Nature, and we have to still, protect our claims in the basin for the future. And so we were very careful to make sure that we included all of our past and present water uses in both basins in order to preserve that in this settlement. So past and present water uses in the Rio San Jose and Rio Puerco basins includes domestic, commercial, municipal, industrial wells, stock wells, livestock consumption use, stock ponds, storage right, stock ponds consumptive use right. So our technical experts were able to gather all of this data in order to make sure that we include this in the settlement. Next slide. Okay, so this is the data that was collected and which is preserved in the settlement. The Navajo Nation water rights are based again on past and present uses in the Rio San Jose stream system. So it was determined that there is 638 acre feet per year of groundwater with a priority date of 1849. And 1849 is actually when the Navajo Nation entered into its first treaty with the United States. Also, 35 acre feet a year for the purpose of livestock and wildlife watering, 493 acre feet quantified storage right for stock ponds, 382 acre feet a year of consumptive use right through evaporation for stock ponds, all with a priority date of 1849. The stock ponds on fee lands is the construction date. Okay, so recognition of the existing state law-based water rights of the Navajo Nation and express recognition that the Navajo Nation may acquire additional state law-based rights. So what that means is if the Navajo Nation purchases additional lands, we would call that in fee, we would have to have our water rights recognized through the state law-based water system, and this is what usually happens anyway, and so it wouldn't have the same priority dates, but we could still put that land in trust, and our water rights could also be held in trust as well. But there will just be a difference in how what the priority date would be for those newly acquired lands and water rights. Next slide. Okay, so this is for the Rio Puerco Basin. It was determined that there is, for past and present uses, it's 363 acre feet a year diversion within the Rio Puerco subbasin. So this is what is part of the settlement. 143 acre feet a year diversion within the Arroyo Chico subbasin of groundwater with a priority date, again, of 1849. Water rights for livestock water uses in the Rio Puerco Basin are to be quantified and described using the same methodology used for the Rio San Jose stream system livestock rights. And so, although we are finalizing a settlement, we still have the ability to get this data and get these numbers to make it part of the settlement. And we want to make sure that it's all done accurately, up to date, and so that we get the right numbers included in the settlement. So recognition again for newly acquired water rights will again be based on state law. Okay, next slide. Groundwater. So included in the settlement is future water demands. So for the settlement, the Navajo Nation will have a right to divert and consume 1,300 acre feet a year of water. This is in addition to the past and present uses. So the purpose of this water would be for additional groundwater rights for domestic, commercial, municipal, and industrial use. And the places of use for this future groundwater is, of course, on the Navajo Nation in the Rio San Jose and Rio Puerco basins. Next slide. Also included in the settlement is the right to use water without any interference for traditional Navajo agricultural water use practices. And this is a provision that was actually developed by the Pueblos of Acoma and Laguna when they were negotiating their water rights, and it was actually adopted by the court. And it is included in our settlement as well. And all of the parties that involved in the case in our negotiations stipulated, which means they agreed to this provision, that in addition to our water rights, that we also have this right to use water for traditional purposes, traditional agricultural purposes. Next slide. Okay, so I talked about how the settlement would bring infrastructure, water development infrastructure to the Navajo Nation as part of the settlement. So in this settlement, we are requesting a fund of $243,271,000. And this will fund projects that are listed here. It'll fund our ability to bring a water line connection, and this would actually be a kind of an extension from the lateral, the Crown Point lateral, and it'll be an extension that will go all the way down from Crown Point to Theru, serving the chapters along the way. And so what this is actually doing is it's importing water, and this water is from and flowing from the San Juan River, and it flowing through the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project. And so we do have a right, the Navajo Nation, through that settlement, to utilize that water on the Navajo Nation. And so it is probably the best quality water for the Navajo Nation to be used in New Mexico and including in these basins. So I talked about past and present uses, and that's groundwater from the Rio San Jose Basin. But in addition, the settlement is going to allow us to import this great quality water from another area of the Navajo Nation to the Rio San Jose communities on the Navajo Nation. Other projects is for funding for wastewater development, a chlorination station, water hauling stations, where water hauling stations aren't currently located in some of those communities, to assist with the operation and maintenance costs. So there will be a trust fund created, and this, what we call OMNR, is funding that will help defray the cost to customers that are being served with this water. So of course, the utility will deliver the water out to the communities, and we're getting this funding is important to help keep the costs down that would be passed on normally through the customers, to the customers. This funding will also fund projects for water line extensions and bathroom additions. And this is really unique to water rights settlements. Usually water rights settlements are about bringing the water to the community. And then the next step is, getting funding for water line extension and bathroom additions. But in the settlement, because of the need in the area, we did agree with the other parties that some of these funds could be used for that purpose. And then also livestock water projects. We know that feeding our animals is very important. And so we wanted to make sure that we included funding for those projects, sanitation projects, and then a water acquisition fund. The water acquisition fund is really important to the settlement, and it's also really important to the To'Hajiilee chapter. So there's currently a pipeline that has been funded through other dollars. It's not part of this settlement, the funding for that pipeline. And there's also an agreement with the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Utility Authority, and also we in the state of New Mexico, and we also are working, or I guess you could say we're leasing water from the Hickory Apache Nation to go to the utility authority, and then that water would be piped through this new pipeline that's being built and serve the community of To'Hajiilee. And that's because currently the water in Tuahajale is limited, and any water that is available is of poor quality. And so again, we're seeing the need and the opportunity to be able to import quality water to a Navajo community through this settlement. And again, it's the entire Rio San Jose Basin, and then this portion of the Rio Puerco Basin where water is limited and water that is available is of poor quality. So we saw this opportunity to serve Tuahajale, to get imported water to Tuahajale. And the reason why we have a water acquisition fund is because we would like to be able to acquire our own water rights and ability to serve our Navajo communities with our own water rather than continuing to lease it. And so that's the purpose of this fund. And it might be something that we need to utilize in other areas as well. But right now, that's the project that we are most focused on for the for this water acquisition fund, is for the chapter of Tuahajale. And so that is one of the reasons why we included the Rio Puerco Basin to the settlement. Next slide. So this is the map that we showed the New Mexico side earlier. This is now the map is showing the entire Navajo Nation, and you'll see that a lot of the homes that are without piped water on our nation are mostly in the west, in the Arizona portion, and also in Utah. They're at the top of the map. You'll see that again, those communities that are depicted in red have the most homes that are without piped water. And so red is more than 200 homes. Again, orange is 150 to 200 homes without piped water. Then in yellow, it's 100 to 150 homes. The gray is 50 to 100, and the light blue is 0 to 50. And so it's safe to say that these are the areas where Navajo our Navajo people have to haul water in order to have water for domestic purposes, and also for their animals and their crops. And so we are working very hard to try to bring we are working very hard to bring water, not to try. We are bringing water, and through these 2 settlements that are going to be introduced to council and approved by Congress, that's what these will do, is to address this issue here. So next slide. This is the vision for the Navajo Nation. This map was actually generated by NTUA, the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority. We call it the Global Water Map, and it is the vision for the Navajo Nation. And you'll see different lines throughout this map, but I'm going to first draw your attention to the black dots. The black dots depict all of the Navajo Nation homes that are without piped water. And you'll see, that it's very similar to the last map that we looked at, but each dot represents, homes without water. And so in designing and planning to our water development infrastructure to bring water to the communities, this map shows pipelines. So on the left side, it's more clear that there's a long red line here. That is the pipeline that is that we're working towards in the Arizona settlement. And that would bring water from Lake Powell all the way down to the southern chapters, including Loop, and then also, along the way to the city, Cameron, and so forth. And so that's what that pipeline is. And it's in red because it is not, it doesn't exist yet, and it's still in the planning phases. Now you go to the right of the map in New Mexico, and you'll see a long green line, and the green line represents that this is constructed. So this is the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project, the pipeline, and it starts way up here in the Shiprock area, and it's going all the way down to Gallup, and it's in the name. Gallup is going to also be served by the pipeline as well. It's still being constructed. It's not completed, but there are portions that are completed. You'll see here off to the right, there is the cutter lateral, and that is serving Navajo communities now and has been for a couple of years. And I do want to point out that that cutter lateral extension that is completed does serve some of the communities in the Rio Puerco Basin. And so, and it's also serves the Hickory Apache Nation, and yes, in that portion of their reservation. So, and then, oops, if you could go back. The blue lines are the actual service lines that currently exist, and those are operated by NTUA. And that is mostly groundwater that's being used to serve the communities in those areas. Okay, next slide. So Navajo allotments, there's a lot of Navajo allotments in the Eastern Agency. And as I said at the beginning of the presentation, this settlement includes is for Navajo trust lands. So this settlement will not impact the Navajo allotments that are in the Rio San Jose stream system, including in the Rio Puerco Basin. So the United States represents the allottees in these water rights claims and water rights cases and settlements. And so for the allottees, they will be represented by the United States, and their claims will move forward in the future if that is what is decided by the allottees. And however, this settlement will not impact those allotments at this time. So I know that's very important for allottees to know. And I do want to remind you that settlements are an alternative to litigation. In litigation, it's an adversarial system where a court, in all of our Indian water rights litigations, those are state courts that make these decisions. What comes out of it is the quantification of water rights, but funding is not included. So when you settle, you can get funding for water infrastructure. And however, when you settle, you have to waive your future claims. You have to compromise, and what you're compromising for and waiving claims for is for that funding, so that you can actually have infrastructure developed to bring wet water to the communities. And so in a way, the Navajo allottees versus the Navajo Nation government, which has a responsibility, is very different than, you know, a individual allotments and allottees who don't have that kind of responsibility. So the settlement will still serve all Navajo Nation members within the basin. That includes allottees. They're not treated differently by the Navajo Nation to provide access to water. But there's just a different legal status to the homes, to the land that the homes are on for allotments. So I'm going to move forward. Next slide. Okay, so throughout the past year, or actually just the past 6 months ish, we have been going out. We've been, we've actually been negotiating these water settlements longer than that. But when we saw that we were nearing finality, we started to go out to the public to tell our Navajo members about the settlement, and also to educate on what water rights litigation is, and how it works, and also water rights settlements and how they work, and what we take into consideration as we're moving forward. And our whole goal is to bring wet water to our communities. Now, I saw that someone asked the question. I was able to see it. Explain wet water. So let me go back and explain paper water first, and then I'll explain wet water. So when you litigate your water rights claims in a court, the court will ultimately make a decision on what our water rights claims are. And that decision is written on paper. It's the decree. And so we will, at the end of a court case, we will know what our water rights are, and we will have the decree to say what our water rights are. And so we call that paper water. Now, wet water is where we actually see water delivered to our communities. In litigation, but funding isn't included. We would not get an award of funds for infrastructure development. We would only get our water rights quantified. In settlement, we have the opportunity to get funds, and again, as I said, there's compromises that have to be made by all parties, and in exchange for ending litigation and for accepting what was negotiated as what our water rights are, in exchange for that, we get funding for that infrastructure development. And that infrastructure development is what's so important in order for us to bring wet water to the communities. So we would actually realize water delivery to the community. So that's why we call it wet water. I hope that answers your question. So we have had public education meetings going back to December of 2023. And last evening, I actually presented again to the Eastern Navajo Agency Council. It was actually a planning meeting. And we've been all around the Eastern Navajo Nation to provide these public education meetings. And for the future, and now that the legislation is being dropped for the Navajo Nation Council to consider, we are going to have a meeting on May 16th at the Rio chapter to talk in more detail about what's in the settlement. So as soon as the settlement is introduced into the Navajo Nation Council process, it becomes public. And so I urge you to go on the Navajo Nation Council website, or contact your council delegate or the legislative services, and find out how you can get access to a copy of the entire settlement document for your review. And as soon as the legislation is introduced, it opens up a public comment period. So the Navajo Nation law states that there has to be at least 5 days of public comment, an opportunity for the public to comment on the Navajo Nation legislation. So we, as soon as it's dropped, that begins, and we believe that the opportunity to provide public comments is going to be more than 5 days for this legislation. I believe it's going to be probably 12 to 14 days. So the public comment can be submitted before the Navajo Nation Council takes action. And my understanding is that there will be a special session to consider these settlements, and that won't be until probably May 23rd. So there's about 2 weeks of an opportunity to provide public comments. Next, and please, if you are from the eastern area, I encourage you to come to the Theru chapter on May 16th. The meeting will be from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. And again, we will be providing more detail on the settlement as well. There will be lunch served. So if you also want lunch, it will be served around 12:30 p.m. and then we will go into our presentation. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so that's the end of this presentation for today. I thank you all for joining me. We have about approximately 10 more minutes, and I can take some questions if any were posted. I did get the one question. And let me see if there are any other questions. I see that it was Haspa Rose who asked the question or asked me to explain wet water, and I hope I did that in a coherent way. And so I don't see any other questions. Hi, Attorney General. Welcome back.
Hi. Thanks so much for that great presentation, Michelle. Yeah, this is so exciting to have that additional water security for these communities because, as you mentioned, without the settlement and the provisions that allow these alternative out of basin, essentially sources of water, the quality of the water is really difficult to work with. And so this is one way to ensure meaningful access to water for our community members in the Rio San Jose stream system and the Rio Puerco Basin. So thank you so much, and to all of our team for the hard work that you've put into this. So great. And actually, Michelle brought to the table some special knowledge, being from the Torreon community, Torreon Star Lake community. So she was able to bring that to bear in our negotiations and just in the work that she was doing. So really, really great to have your perspective in that respect, Michelle. And so, yeah, I don't see any further questions, but thank you everyone for listening. And we hope that you'll review the legislation and the settlement when it's made available. And that will be very soon. And please let us know if you have any questions. As Michelle noted, we're going to be doing lots of things on the public education front. We have a radio forum next week on Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. on KTNN. We have our work session on Wednesday, which is actually the same day as a groundbreaking for the To'Hajiilee water extension. It'll be connecting the city of Albuquerque municipal system to To'Hajiilee to ensure that clean drinking water in that community. And so we're very excited to be there for that. So the work session will actually be in Albuquerque in order to ensure that we're able to be there and Michelle can see the groundbreaking and the fruits of her labor. So we're very excited for that. And then let's see, what else? You mentioned the Theru public education session. Do we have other public education things? Am I missing anything?
Oh, well, for New Mexico, it will be in Theru on May 16th, but we are also requesting to be on agency council agendas. So on the 18th and 19th, it's possible. That's why I was meeting with Eastern yesterday. It's possible that we have additional opportunities to present.
Definitely. So we are here. You guys know how to reach us. If you have any questions, contact Michelle or myself. My office at the Office of the Attorney General is 928-871-6345. We're happy to take your questions and assist in whatever way we can Michelle, do you want to give your number?
Sure.
And the website also, the Water Rights Commission website is extremely helpful. It's going to have access to everything you need. It'll have a copy of the resolution, the settlement agreement, additional information. In fact, there are information pages on that site that relate to all of the basins that the nation has claims in, so you can actually do a little bit of research and dive a little more deeply into the issue. And of course, the Water Rights Commission Facebook page is great. These videos will be out there, and we'll be coming up with additional video content as well. So look for that to come out. So Michelle, did you want to add something?
Oh, I was just going to say the presentations that we've given in the past, and this one as well, will be on the Water Rights Commission's website as well. So you can learn more about the settlement and about water rights and everything that we're dealing with to get us to where we are now. So thank you again for joining.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great day.